Mark Mitchell.
Mr Speaker, I have some sympathy for the Speaker that's just taken his seat. That was a real struggle for him. If you actually have a look and try to find the substance in that speech, you'll struggle. It was a whole lot of flim-flam, and that's what we saw. That's what we saw on, during the Select Committee process as well. Is that there was a heavy focus on process. So let me just very quickly address the process side of things, because I want to acknowledge that we have got Dr David Clark as the trade portfolio holder that subbed on to the committee. We didn't see him for all the hearings, but that's probably true. Dr Kennedy Graham from the Greens, of course, will probably focus on process as well, and I'll acknowledge Fletcher Tabato from New Zealand First. The process. So what we did first of all is that we doubled the amount of time for people to be able to make submissions on the TPP. The text itself, that was publicly available in November of last year. So people had 4 or 5 months to actually, and of course we had the national interest analysis as well that was available to people. We also, as a committee, made a decision that we would accept late submissions, and we did that. And we worked with submitters that came to us. Professor Jane Kelsey is probably a high-profile example of someone that was also working on the Waitangi hearing around the TPP, and she requested additional time. We accommodated her, we gave her additional time, and she came along and she was able to make her submission. To be honest with you, we were surprised at her submission. It was very low-key, and there weren't any major issues that were raised during her submission that the committee hadn't already heard. I want to address some of those issues, but one thing that I do want to raise, and I find it very interesting looking across at the Labor benches, is that I know that there are free traders in the Labor caucus. I don't see any of them in the House today. Maybe Stuart Nash maybe, because Stuart will be he'll have a great feeling in terms of how important it is for his manufacturing businesses and the primary industry, very strong primary industries that he has in his electorate, and he'll understand the importance of the TPP to them. So let's see if he takes a call. I'll be interested to see who takes a call. It was great to see Grant Robertson come onto the committee. It was great to see him come on to participate in the deliberation, because what he did when he came onto the committee, what Grant did is he highlighted some points that were actually very positive, that were very, very good, things that were great about the agreement that actually hadn't been picked up. You did a great job with that, Grant. We actually appreciate your input. It might have been helpful if you had spoken with David before you came to the committee. But anyway, I don't want to dwell too much on that. What I want to dwell on is the bottom lines. No, that's right. Let's dwell on the bottom lines that Andrew Little gave us, because there's something here that needs to be addressed. So let's go through the first one. Farm Act must be protected. Farm Act must be protected. So let's go and see what we've. Let's go to the actual our committee report. Farm Act. The Farm Act model will remain unchanged under TPP, including Farm Act's ability to prioritise which pharmaceuticals will get listed for reimbursement and its negotiating practices. However, there will be some additional transparency requirements associated with the Farm Act process, and this will involve potentially an upfront cost of $4.5 million and maybe $2.2 million as ongoing costs annually. So the Farm Act model is protected. Tick. Let's tick that one off. Farm Act is protected. Grant, great news. That corporations can successfully sue the government for regulating in the public interest. So this goes back to ISDS. Let's see what the committee uncovered in terms of ISDS. The ISDS mechanism, Section B of Chapter 9, provides for the settlement of disputes between foreign investors and the government in the country in which the investment is made. If a dispute cannot be settled within 6 months through consultation and negotiation, the investor may submit this issue to arbitration. The ISDS mechanism applies only to the investment provisions in the TPP. Despite ISDS, governments retain the right to regulate in the public interest under TPP. Important safeguards include protecting discriminatory regulatory actions by the New Zealand Government to protect legitimate public welfare objectives, such as public health, safety and the environment. Couldn't be any clearer. We note that the ISDS provisions enable protection for New Zealanders who may be operating in countries with a different legal system from New Zealand. We also note that there is no way in which TPP affects New Zealand's sovereignty and New Zealand's right to legislate in the public interest. We couldn't be any clearer. Let's tick that box. That the Treaty of Waitangi must be upheld. Well, we've seen the recent findings from the hearing that was held around that. Let's tick that box. That meaningful gains are made for our farmers in tariff reductions and market access. So what I find very interesting is that we're not going to hear from the Honourable Phil Goff. Why? As a past Trade Minister, he supports this agreement, along with another past leader, Helen Clark, also supports it. Says that we can't afford to be out of it. The interesting thing, the Honourable Phil Goff, no economic portfolio, no trade-related portfolios. We've got David Shearer, who made a very good contribution on the committee again. No economic, no trade portfolios. Where is he? I don't know if we'll hear from him. The Honourable Damien O'Connor, a free trader. He's a free trader. He holds the primary industries portfolio. Let us see who came and made a submission to the committee and who said this agreement was critically important to their industries and the future growth of New Zealand. We had the Meat Industry Association. We had Beef and Lamb New Zealand, the New Zealand Manufacturers and Exporters Association, New Zealand Wine Growers, Dairy Companies Association of New Zealand, Fonterra, of course, Export New Zealand, Manufacturing New Zealand, Horticultural New Zealand Incorporated, New Zealand Horticultural Export Authority, Federated Farmers. I could go on and on. I'd be very interested to see if the Honourable Damien O'Connor, as the primary exports portfolio or industries portfolio holder, will come to this House today and stand up and say that they are not supporting this free trade agreement. I doubt that we will see that. I agree with you. I don't think we'll see that. Let's tick that box. The other thing that I'm very interested for the next speaker to get up and address is this. Is that when we first had their when we had their 5 bottom lines put out by the Labor Party, by the Labor leader, the wording around the restriction of farmland and housing was just that, the restriction of foreign sales on residential properties and farmland. No, it's not. No, it wasn't a ban. No, it wasn't a ban. The ban has been introduced. This is very clear, the fact that it was restriction. We have the right settings, we have the ability right now, and we manage the restriction on foreign ownership of our farms and residential property very, very well. If you have changed your position, if you are trying to, this is an omnibus bill, you guys are faced with a big problem. How are you going to back yourself out of your position? And that's what you're doing right now. I am sure there's some interesting conversations going on in your caucus room. Grant, how are you going to back yourself out of this position? Because you know that it's a very poor one. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.